Aning. Please carry my legs on my shoulders. I really can't handle it anymore. Could you please be gentle? Traveling through the world of tomb raiding, becoming the ancestor of the Zhang family, and lingering with Aning for a night, the two of them went through ups and downs, biting their silver teeth. Activate the mysterious illustrated guide. As long as you come into contact with antiques with mysterious functions or slay monsters, you can light up the guidebook and receive rich rewards. Coincidentally, Snake Marsh Ghost City has opened. Light up the Meteor Bronze. Reward the Snake God's Eye, the Boundless Demon Eye, and the Unreal Space. Light up the Ghost Seal. Reward 10,000 Ghost Dragon Cavalry. Kill the Cocktail Snake. Reward the Candle Dragon's Eye and the Golden Sand Searching Dragon Technique. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. 001, Zhang Qilin pays respects to the ancestor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Husband, when do you plan to marry us? Duoling and Hualing lay on either side of Zhang Mu. Just now, after a sweaty battle, the two of them were already on the brink of death. But I still haven't forgotten about letting Zhang Mu marry them. The person I was destined for has not yet appeared, let's wait and see. Zhang Mu stood up and walked towards the bathroom. Between playing with Duoling and Hualing, I fell into a deep sleep. Zhang Mu is a traveler who travels from the era of Longling Cave to this world of tomb raiding. By chance, Hualing was saved and his flower core was watered daily with the scorching heat of pure yang to prevent the curse of the times. Later, when the partridge whistled left for the United States, the two stayed in China and accompanied each other day by day. In the 1970s, Hu Bai and Snow Pear Yang asked him to go out of the mountain and return to the ruins at the bottom of the sea. He saved Duoling. In order to relieve his curse, he irrigated his flower core with the boiling heat of pure yang every day to stop and delay it. Gradually, Duoling and Hualing discovered that walking together can make their youth shine and their appearance not grow old. Therefore, it lasts for 3 days day and night, enduring for a long time. Fortunately, Zhang Mu has been walking on the Longling Mountains, entering the snowy mountains, and returning to the countryside for many years. With a considerable wealth, he has also lived a prosperous life. The reason why he can walk so many places is because he has a system in place. His system is quite unique. Mysterious Illustrated Guide. As long as you come into contact with antiques with mysterious functions or slay monsters, you can light up the guidebook and receive rich rewards. For example, light up the Dust Pearl Guidebook. Reward the Snake God's Eye, the Boundless Demon Eye, and the Unreal Space. Light up the Snake Eyebrow Copper Fish Illustrated Guide. Reward the Thousand Nations Konyu Art and the Secret of Hiding the Sea. Light up the Candle 9-in Illustrated Guide. Reward the Candle Dragon's Eye, Forget Qi Technique, and True Dragon Control Technique. Therefore, there are various large tombs in the sky and underground. He went all the way. Although there are many dangers in the tomb, he always manages to turn misfortune into good fortune. Because he also has an identity. The ancestor of the Zhang family. With the bloodline of the Qilin, he himself is like an open hanging existence, let alone lighting up so many picture books. Just that he once met Blind Chen and calculated a divination for him. In the land of snakes and ghosts, there is a female career that can awaken the bloodline of the ancestor Qilin. When he heard this, he knew that this person should be talking about Aning. Once the bloodline of Zhu Qilin awakens, he can live forever, maintain his appearance, and those who are pregnant with his own offspring can also live longer years. As long as he constantly receives his own watering, he can enjoy this. After Zhang Mu takes a shower and comes out, Duoling and Hualing were already asleep. After covering them with blankets, Zhang Mu left the door. A flash arrived at Changbai Mountain. When he was lighting up the dust beads, he obtained a skill that could flash back and forth between a designated location and his home. In that case, he settled on the house gifted by the system in Hangzhou, between the ancestral land of the Zhang family in Changbai Mountain. The reason for this is because he found that his best way to rest is to lie in the coffin. And it's still inside the coffin of Changbai Mountain. Half an hour later, it was about the time when Zhang Muqi's 8 meridians were fully filled. I heard soft and skillful footsteps coming from outside. Zhang Qilin, grandfather, have you woken up? Zhang Mu heard the sound and lightly tapped on the coffin. Zhang Qilin heard the sound coming from inside the coffin and quickly reached out to open the golden Nanmu coffin in front of him. Looking up at Zhang Mu's handsome and difficult to distinguish between male and female beauty noodles, Zhang Qilin was also amazed for a moment. He quickly reached out and helped him out, took out a bottle of water from his backpack, and fed it to Zhang Mu to drink. Zhang Qilin lowered his head and knelt on one knee beside Zhang Mu. Sorry, Ancestor. Zhang Mu knew that Zhang Qilin didn't like to talk, but what he meant was that he was too embarrassed to bother himself and rest. No, actually I just woke up not long ago. Zhang Mu smiled slightly and said, Get up, you are the head of the Zhang family, you cannot kneel down casually. Zhang Qilin, I know. Zhang Qilin followed Zhang Mu's instructions and sat beside him, with a hint of admiration on his usually aloof face. Zhang Mu sipped water to moisten his throat and couldn't help but wonder, do you still remember me? Zhang Qilin nodded and said, Yes, grandfather, I remember you. Although I have forgotten many things, I do remember you. I remember when you had an accident, I was only 10 years old and I had heard of your story. I remember that you were a divine presence in the hearts of our Xie generation at that time, and I particularly admire you. Zhang Qilin rarely said a few more words. It can be seen from the depths of his heart that he admires Zhang Mu. Grandfather, I'm here to send you the Qilin exhaustion. I just found some in the ancient tomb and thought you might be able to use them because I have to find a friend who has been in some trouble lately. Qilin exhaustion. For outsiders, it is a good thing to derive the Qilin bloodline, even for the Zhang family, it is also a good thing to restore qi and blood. You can keep this Qilin exhaust, and I'll go with you. It's perfect for moving your muscles and bones. Zhang Mu stood up and moved his stiff body for a moment. If I'm not mistaken, Zhang Qilin's friend should be Wu Zai, right? I just don't know what the plot is now. Let's go, stay here for a while longer and I'll soon grow mushrooms. Zhang Qilin, Zhang Mu's handsome suit was draped with a long cloak, covering him tightly. Under the cloak, there was still a golden mask on the face, covering the upper part of the face. The tassel hanging below the mask looked very mysterious. And behind him was a mysterious box. 002, Go Down the Mountain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Grandfather, what exactly is this? Said Zhang Qilin. Zhang Mu said, Mechanism box. With a smile on his face, he opened the cloth strip wrapped around it and saw a box made of rosewood and nanmu. The box was engraved with various exotic beasts, exquisitely crafted. Zhang Mu groped and pressed on it a few times before opening the box. Inside was a silver-white sword, a jade screen flute, and some exquisite small objects. After tidying up everything, Zhang Mu slowly spoke up and said, All right, Liner, now tell me about your friend. Next is a scene that can be recorded in history. Zhang Qilin said so much for the first time, explaining everything about Wu Xie. Based on what Zhang Qilin said, Zhang Mu roughly guessed that this is the plot of Going to Tomuto now. Zhang Mu nodded and said, So you're going to find Wu Xie now? Zhang Qilin said, Zhang Mu said, Let's go now and I'll accompany you. Zhang Qilin. Okay. So he took Zhang Mu back to Hangzhou. Although Zhang Qilin often lost his memory, he also gained a basic understanding of Zhang Mu's personality on the way. There is arrogance, pride, nobility, and a special charm, as if as long as he is by his side, accidents will not occur. Zhang Qilin and Zhang Mu walked around to the vicinity of Wushanju, but stopped to take a look and did not approach. Both of them could sense that someone was following them. Zhang Qilin turned his head to look at Zhang Mu, who nodded at him. The two of them turned into an empty alley one by one. After a while, a person wearing sunglasses followed in. Before Zhang Mu could make a move, Zhang Qilin had already made a move, and the two had already exchanged hands in an instant. Zhang Mu, who was familiar with the plot, naturally knew in his heart that the person wearing sunglasses was the one with black glasses and good combat power in the stolen pen. However, he still had not hit Zhang Qilin, or in other words, he had no intention of entanglement at all. Following Zhang Qilin's motion of throwing him out, he quickly left and accidentally caught a glimpse of the figure wearing a red cloak next to Zhang Qilin, frowning slightly. Ancestor, this person a bit familiar on the other side. Zhang Mu walked up to Zhang Qilin and reached out to take out a business card from the pocket of Zhang Qilin's hoodie. Zhang Qilin looked at Zhang Mu with some confusion, and Zhang Mu handed the card over. Then Zhang Mu spoke up and said, "This guy with sunglasses seems to want you to find him. That person should be someone you know, right?" Zhang Qilin said, He took the business card handed over by Zhang Mu and held it in his hand. He glanced at it and then spoke faintly, "This person is called Black Glasses, also known as Black Blind. We have both pinched the llama." Zhang Mu nodded and shook his head, "You go meet him." Zhang Mu looked at Zhang Qilin. Zhang Mu continued, "I'll wait for you to come back here." Zhang Qilin glanced at him, pondered for a moment, and nodded. A small massage stall on the street, where a person wearing sunglasses is massaging someone, whispering while massaging Black Glasses, "Uncle Lei, I estimate you're over 70 years old when I touch your bone age, right?" The person known as Uncle Lei spoke up and said, "How can I speak? Don't look at my white hair, I'm 30.7 this year." With black glasses and a grin on his face, he said, "It's only 30.7. As he spoke, he started to make the next move. The person known as Uncle Lei spoke up and said, Hey. It hurts so much. It hurts me so much." Then he jumped up with a jerk. Black Glasses, not pressed. The person known as Uncle Lei said, "If I don't press it anymore, I'm afraid of pain." Then he left the money and turned around to leave. Black Glasses picked up the 50 yuan left by the man and flicked it. "Roast, if you press a hole on your body, it will be 30.7, and you will be fat," Black Glasses said. He turned to look at Zhang Qilin, who was sitting beside the old god, and chuckled. Black Glasses spoke with a contemptuous expression. "Boss, do you want a massage?" Zhang Qilin. Black Glasses saw that Zhang Qilin was ignoring him, so he sighed helplessly and took out a business card from his pocket. He lowered his voice and said, "Golmud and Qinghai, foreigners are taking llamas. Are you going?" Zhang Qilin looked at the business card handed over by his Black Glasses, frowned and pondered for a moment. Thinking that the place he was going to was also Qinghai, he reached out to take the business card and stood up to leave. However, just as Zhang Qilin was about to take a few steps, Black Glasses stopped him and handed him a business card. With a cheap smile, he said, "Come visit my massage parlor when you have time, there are many special services." Zhang Qilin coldly glanced at the unprofessional guy and walked away, his Black Glasses reluctantly retracting his hand. "He's really a mute Zhang, as his name suggests," he said. Zhang Qilin returned to the original alley to find Zhang Mu. "Zhang Mu. Let's go." Zhang Qilin. Zhang Qilin was planning to take Zhang Mu to a house in Hangzhou, which was a bit remote. He took Zhang Mu to a taxi and arrived at an old city area. At first glance, the most residents inside were some elderly people. Turn left and right, and enter a quiet blue brick alley. Take a few more steps and turn your head, and you will see a wooden door painted black. Zhang Qilin glanced at Zhang Mu, took a deep breath, and said lightly, "Here we are. Memories from 100 years ago." You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's probably because Zhang Qilin hasn't been back for a long time. The key made an unbearable sound as it was twisted inside the heavy iron lock, but at least it was opened. Pushing open the door, the vibration caused a large amount of dust to scatter and fly around. Zhang Qilin frowned and took a step back with Zhang Mu. The two of them were already indifferent to the scene, waiting for the dust to fall before stepping into the door. He turned around and inserted the door latch, and Zhang Mu stepped into the almost desolate small courtyard to look around. There are weeds and a few wild flowers growing tenaciously in the cracks of the blue bricks, and there is also a large flower tree of unknown variety next to the wall. A part of the originally white wall skin has turned yellow and peeled off, revealing the red bricks and cement inside, as well as traces of moisture and large areas of moss. The house is a double-layered structure, with exaggerated spider webs hanging between the tiles and the walls. There are a few pieces of glass with unknown white dirt on them. If it's even more dilapidated, it looks like the haunted old houses he used to read in horror novels in his past life. Zhang Qilin fell silent for a moment, then pushed open the hall door and entered. The furniture such as tables and sofas inside were still there, and a layer of dust had accumulated on the dust-proof cloth, making it impossible to see the original color. Walking over can leave a clear and visible trail of footprints on the ground. The kitchen is on the first floor, and besides the gas stove and gas tank, there is only one pot. The toilet is on the other side of the house, and even after turning on the faucet, there is still water. Zhang Qilin smiled warmly and said, "I paid the water and electricity bill for a year last time. After calculating, there should still be more than half of the gas." Zhang Mu followed Zhang Qilin upstairs again. The environment upstairs was pretty good, with a bedroom and study. To Zhang Mu's surprise, there was also a small balcony with good lighting. Although it's not possible to check in immediately, everything is actually good, but it's not bad. When Zhang Qilin opened the cabinet in the bedroom, a musty smell hit his face. Zhang Qilin. Zhang Mu looked at him with a smile and then said, "Liner, it's been a long time since she came back. It's already afternoon. Today, we can only clean up the house briefly, and then go buy some necessary items and new bedding. Tomorrow, we'll renovate the yard. How about that?" "Okay," Zhang Qilin said after a slight cough of embarrassment. The decoration in the room is not actually complicated. It seems that Zhang Qilin is the only one living there. It's just some dust and other things that can be quickly cleaned up. Zhang Mu and Zhang Qilin cleaned it up briefly before leaving the door. The two of them waited at a restaurant in the Diaoyutai Imperial Garden in Hangzhou to finish their meal, then bought some daily necessities and walked back. As soon as they left, there were faint signs of rain, and the sky had completely darkened, starting to drizzle. After coming out of Carrefour, Zhang Mu was carrying a shopping bag in one hand and a large plastic bag with quilts at his feet. In the other hand, he was holding an oil paper umbrella that Zhang Qilin bought when he passed the umbrella store. The umbrella was covered with beautiful red flowers on the other side, which was very beautiful. Zhang Mu held an umbrella and waited at the entrance of the mobile phone store, while also sending away several young girls who were chatting with him. Zhang Mu has always been very sensitive to weather prediction. Even without the use of celestial feng shui techniques, he can get a glimpse. Some pedestrians on the street without umbrellas hurriedly search for shelter from the rain, while only a few with umbrellas are still walking slowly. And at this moment, a young man with an umbrella walked towards him. He lowered his head and typed on his phone, and his eyebrows and eyes were very clean. He had a subtle feeling that Zhang Mu couldn't express. This feeling is difficult to describe in words, and Zhang Mu couldn't help but take another look at him. With just one more glance, the young man with deep brown hair suddenly lifted his head and happened to meet Zhang Mu's gaze. The young man was stunned for a moment, only to see a person standing not far from him, wearing a red cloak, wearing a golden mask with tassels on the upper half of his face, and holding a red oil paper umbrella. It was enchanting and eye-catching. Then, when he regained his senses, he hurriedly and politely smiled at Zhang Mu. Zhang Mu smiled warmly and saw him quickly pass by with his umbrella down. Scared away. The voice of Zhang Qilin, which Zhang Mu was thinking in his heart, came from behind. Grandfather, what are you looking at? He put his phone in his pocket, took his long legs and stepped into the umbrella, picking up the rubber bag containing the bedding. It's nothing, let's go. Zhang Mu smiled and then tilted the umbrella over to give Zhang Qilin a little. This oil paper umbrella is big enough to make the two of them slim. Zhang Mu and Zhang Qilin finished breakfast and returned to the yard, then the two of them began to clean up carefully. There is a blue sky outside the window and birds chirping on the trees. Zhang Mu hummed a tune and wrung the cloth dry, carefully wiping the tables and chairs clean. Yesterday, he only roughly cleaned them once. Zhang Qilin was holding a mop beside him, slightly stunned when he heard Zhang Muham's tune. Linner, what's wrong? Zhang Mu stopped and turned his head to look at Zhang Qilin. Patriarch, the melody you just sang. I seem to have heard it somewhere before. Upon hearing Zhang Qilin's words, Zhang Mu was also stunned. The little song I sang myself was not really a famous song, and it was completely blurry in my mind. But it seemed like I remembered the melody and naturally started humming it when cleaning the room, which was a bit dull and boring. 004, Encounter Anning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Nodding, Zhang Mu continued to hum the tune based on his memory in his mind. This minor has a characteristic of being very low and gentle, with a touch of comfort. At the end, it slowly fades away, like a lullaby. Do you remember? Zhang Mu turned his body and looked at him. Zhang Qilin's expression flashed with a hint of confusion. He shook his head slightly, and his slightly long bangs swept over his tall nose bridge. I don't remember. I don't remember either. Maybe I sang it to you when you were a child. Zhang Qilin shook his head and spoke. Why Zhang Mu knew why he didn't remember what he was saying, so he patted the shoulder afraid of him and smiled. Forget it, I'll remember it in the future. After Zhang Mu finished speaking these words, he continued to be busy. After carefully cleaning the entire room and glass, Zhang Mu went to the yard to clean up the weeds. Zhang Qilin went to renovate the courtyard wall, and after cleaning up the weeds, the yard became much more spacious. Zhang Mu wanted to go out and buy something to decorate the yard, and also buy groceries to cook. Zhang Mu and Zhang Qilin stayed in the small courtyard for several days, during which Zhang Qilin went out several times. During this time, he received an invitation from Wu Sanxing and prepared his equipment. On that day, Zhang Qilin packed his things and took Zhang Mu out. After merging with Black Glasses, let's go to Golmud together. Zhang Qilin led Zhang Mu to find Black Glasses and then got into the car that came to pick them up. Black Glasses looked at Zhang Mu, who couldn't see his face as soon as he put on his cloak and hat, and then blew a whistle. Oh. This big brother, isn't he the same big brother we saw last time? He's covering up so tightly. Black Glasses chuckled lowly. Zhang Qilin responded coldly. In fact, Zhang Qilin's personality is like this. If he is not a very familiar person, he rarely talks. Even in front of Zhang Mu, he was one of those who spoke less. Zhang Mu nodded on the side, saying hello. The driver kept looking ahead, as if there was no one in the car except for him. Black Glasses saw no one talking, so they didn't speak again and remained speechless all the way. Based on the plot, Zhang Mu naturally understood that the place he, Zhang Qilin, and Black Glasses were going to this time was called Golmud, and there were no direct flights. There were also transfers needed. During these 10 or so hours in the sky, Zhang Mu almost slept with Zhang Qilin throughout the entire journey. By the time a few people arrived in Golmud city, it was almost dark. As soon as Zhang Mu got off the plane, he felt the two people around him adjusting their breathing rates, which made him realize that this was a plateau. Ordinary people who rapidly enter high altitudes above 3,000 meters and are exposed to low pressure and hypoxic environments are highly likely to experience altitude sickness. Common symptoms include headaches, insomnia, decreased appetite, fatigue, and difficulty breathing. For example, a group of people not far from Zhang. A seemingly very strong person fainted straight out and only woke up a few seconds later. His companion immediately took out the medicine and dragged him to the place selling hidden tea, asking him to take it with the tea. Zhang and Zhang Qilin, due to their Qilin bloodline and living in the Changbai Mountains all year round, did not feel any discomfort in the plateau environment. Black glasses are not an ordinary person, they quickly adapted, and then took a taxi to report a place to go and headed to a local tourist inn. 3 people had just entered the inn when they noticed something was wrong. There was a person inside who was looking towards the door. When they saw them, they got up from the sofa and chatted with him in black glasses. The person then took Zhang Qilin and the others to the door of a guest room. They knocked on the door and shouted loudly to the inside. "Miss Ning, they are here." Zhang and Zhang Qilin followed behind, looking through the gap between the black glasses and the person in front. Inside, there was a woman with short hair sitting with her back to the door. She turned her head and her eyes met Zhang's gaze. She was noticeably stunned when she saw Zhang, seeming somewhat surprised. Anning is wearing a slightly slimming leather jacket and pants. The inside of the leather jacket was a white shirt, which was tucked into the waist-cinching black leather skirt. The black and white interwoven clothes perfectly accentuated her slender waist, with a pair of black silk and large white legs underneath. The coat is a slim-fitting leather jacket and there is nothing special about it. The key is having a particularly good figure. Under the black leather jacket, the white shirt underneath couldn't conceal her graceful figure. The front 2 headlights were bulging and groaning, making people envious. Due to getting up, the slender waist skirt that accentuated her heart-shaped figure wrapped around her with a smooth and elegant appearance. A perfect S-curve, paired with a pair of black silk legs and leather boots. She was always present, revealing her slightly familiar aura as a senior sister. The person who answered said hello to Anning and left, looking at her with black glasses that looked rather than a smile. "Miss Ning, don't you welcome our arrival?" "Of course welcome." Anning smiled in Zhang's sight and then turned around to lead someone in. 005, Golmud Sanatorium. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Anning, full of exotic charm, has a full and plump figure, and her skin is moist and transparent. Especially when walking with swaying phoenix, there is a charming and subtle charm in her eyes. From behind, the leather pants seem to be wrapped in abundant bread. A glance made Zhang couldn't help but generate countless thoughts. Right now, Zhang couldn't help but want to press the person directly on the table, fiercely and deeply. This environment even reminded Zhang of the exotic series from the island country. TSK. Of course, this is just a thought. Although Anning, who has been single for a long time, has always been a virgin, it is inevitable to feel lonely and unbearable in the quiet of the night. There are very few men who can enter her eyes. But the man in front of me. But it gives her a very gentle and sunny feeling, especially her cold personality, which complements her fierceness perfectly. After following Anning into the room, I saw several people sitting at the table playing cards. When I heard something moving, I turned my head and looked over. One of the foreigners let out a "wow" sound. Is there a new person in the village? Why is there just one more person than originally mentioned? This foreigner's Chinese is very poor. Although he tried his best to speak in the spoken language of the Dragon Kingdom, Zhang sounded a bit difficult. Zhang, who is familiar with the plot, naturally understands. This person is relatively strong among this group of people, and his name is Caucasian. As for whether it is this or not, Jude's subordinates with this mercenary nature naturally have no interest in knowing. Having a code name is enough. This one. It was brought by Mute Zhang. Black Glasses casually said. A few people in the room, upon hearing Black Glasses say this, all showed surprised expressions. Anning looked at Zhang Mu's expression becoming a bit strange, but didn't say anything. Everyone knows that mute Zhang doesn't like to talk or make friends on weekdays. The strength of those who can be brought here by him is self-evident. Zhang Qilin leaned over and blocked Zhang Mu behind him, causing an awkward atmosphere. Zhang Mu thought for a moment, but still didn't say anything. Zhang Qilin is not very good at socializing, and Zhang Mu doesn't want to talk much, so he defaults to negotiating with Black Glasses. A Caucasian looked at Zhang Mu curiously and asked. Is this young man also a consultant? Zhang Mu really doesn't know if he can be considered a consultant, after all, he just came with Zhang Qilin. Zhang Mu silently thought, ignoring the Caucasians. Seeing that Zhang Mu had no response, the Caucasian thought he didn't understand, so he asked again in a different language. In fact, Zhang Mu couldn't understand it anymore, and he just inferred from the tone of the question that this sentence should be the same as the previous one. Zhang Qilin pulled the hem of Zhang Mu's clothes and gestured for him to sit on the other side, and the two of them began to close their eyes and rest. The Caucasian awkwardly touched the tip of his nose, said something to the few people around him who were holding back their laughter, and then went to play cards with his head down, but his mind clearly became somewhat absent-minded. Compared to meeting strangers, he wants to complete tasks quickly, get money quickly, and enjoy life. Our company's personnel are ready over there. It's up to you now. Get the things before dark, the faster the action, the better. Our car is waiting for you at this place. Anning turned around and looked at her Black Glasses, saying that her beautiful eyes had been staring at Zhang Mu vaguely. The man in front of me give her a very strange feeling, there's a natural sense of closeness. After Anning finished speaking this sentence, he took out a pen from the waves and then drew a circle on a map. He handed the map to Black Glasses, who then looked at it and handed it to Zhang Qilin. Zhang Mu never spoke, but watched together with Zhang Qilin. Although familiar with the plot, he is now amazed by Anning's ability to collect information. It is obvious that this map was hand-drawn, with only partial routes, and appears to be a remote old block. The city of Golmud, which is rarely known in the original drama, is actually a newly built city with wide roads. The old city area has been expanded countless times, but there are always small areas like this everywhere. Due to the awkward location, it has been left behind. Most of the houses here are in Golmud, which means a place with dense rivers in Mongolian. They are located on the Golmud River alluvial plain in the central and southern part of the Qilin Basin, with an average elevation of about 2,800 meters. Most of the bungalows on this map were built in the 1960s and 1970s, and are filled with illegal buildings. The small alleyway marked by Anning on the map is where everyone will go next. After Zhang Qilin silently took note of the entire map, he stopped talking and sat there with his eyes down in silence, looking as if he had some impression of it. Zhang Mu knew that Zhang Qilin was once locked up in Golmud Sanatorium by Zhang Qishan. Later, he took action and rescued Zhang Qilin. At this moment, Zhang Mu reached out and grabbed the hem of Zhang Qilin's clothes, somewhat worried that Zhang Qilin would recall those bad memories. 006, Zhang Qilin beats the forbidden woman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Linner, let me go with you. Zhang Qilin comfortingly patted Zhang Mu's hand as he grabbed the corner of his clothes and whispered, "It's okay, just follow Anning's team and wait for me to come back." Zhang Musong opened his hand and nodded. Black Glasses, oh. Mute Zhang, have you discussed with the handsome guy? Let's set off now. After looking at the watch with Black Glasses, he urgently spoke up. Zhang Qilin ignored his Black Glasses and walked out. Not long after, on the other side, Wu Zai had also figured out the secret in the tape he received, so he almost came to the Golmud Sanatorium alone. After a series of heart-wrenching battles, Wu Trip followed the key to room 306 and found the hidden door in the room. He then descended the stairs to the basement, where there was also a stone coffin, which startled Wu Trip. Wu Zai knew in his heart that the opening of the coffin would inevitably lead to the death of a corpse, so he quickly learned in fear the way a chubby man used to worship coffins. He also bowed to the sarcophagus, carefully observed it, and continued walking around it until he reached the end of the basement. He saw a small iron door, which was very short. Wu Zai walked in and found an office. He carefully pushed open the door and walked in. What caught his eye was a desk, and suddenly discovered that this room was actually the one shown in Huoling's video. The furnishings of the desk, the floor and the wall, are exactly the same as those in the videotape. Wu took them to the edge of the desk and even saw the mirror that Huoling used to comb her hair, which is still in the position in the videotape. At the moment when the memories in the videotape overlapped with reality, Wu Zai's heart jumped wildly and he took a deep breath, suppressing his tense emotions. The strangeness in his heart was almost reaching its peak. Wu Zai stroked his chest and forced himself to calm down. After looking around, he continued to observe with a lighter. Finally, I found a locked drawer in the middle of my desk and found a notebook left by Chen Wenjin inside. This notebook records many mysterious and bizarre things, but surprisingly, it does not mention how they obtained the information or investigated it, nor does it mention anything about Xiuxiu and their disappearance, nor does it mention anything about the situation in this sanatorium. This is a bit strange, but the content inside is very meaningful, all related to Tamuda. Almost half of the space is about analyzing the things left behind by Wang Canghai's iron noodles, and discovering connections to Tamuda. When carefully flipping through it, Wu Zai noticed that there was something wrong with this notebook because there was a noticeable break in the middle. It felt like the notes had been bound or copied again by someone. He forcefully tugged at the gaps between the pages and found no signs of rebinding or tearing. This was a complete notebook. So it can actually be inferred from this that all the content in this note is actually a rewritten copy by Chen Wenjin. She seemed to have selected several notes about Tamuda, copied them down, and gathered them in this notebook. And combined with the content in these notes, it can give people a clear feeling, as if wanting to let people know that the place of Tamuda is crucial and to go there. When Wu Xie was lost in thought, suddenly he saw a pitiful and pale face, the forbidden woman. In an instant, his mind suddenly went blank, losing all his composure. With a strange cry, he ran back and didn't care, charging straight into the darkness. That face was really terrifying, completely devoid of eye whites, all black. The empty eye sockets seemed to have no eyeballs, and he hunched like a spider. As he rushed into the darkness, he groped aimlessly to find the staircase when he came down. But due to the darkness, he groped to the side of the stone coffin and found that it seemed to have been opened by someone. However, by this time, Wu Xie's mind was in chaos, feeling dizzy for a moment, and he had no time to pay attention to this issue. With just a flash, he stood up again and continued to touch forward. However, at this moment, something that made his heart skip a beat even more happened. A hand reached out beside him, and suddenly Wu Xie's mouth was covered by someone, and his body was pinched and unable to move. At this moment, Wu Xie was so frightened that he was completely disoriented. His 7 orifices were smoking, and he struggled hard a few times. The person who controlled him was extremely strong, and he couldn't move at all. At the same time, Wu Xie heard a person whispering in his ear, "Don't move." Zhang Qilin's voice instantly rang in Wu Xie's ear, making him safe. Upon hearing it, he was startled and immediately stopped struggling, his heart almost boiling. Although there were only 2 words, he immediately recognized who he was. This is actually the sound of a stuffy oil bottle. Wu Xie excitedly said, "Little brother. Little brother. Is it really you? Little brother. I thought I would never see you again." 007, Wu Xie, who was trapped. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhang Qilin made a silent gesture, but before he could say anything, the forbidden woman rushed over and both sides started fighting. Zhang Qilin kicked her into the room with all his might and closed the door. He turned around to look at Xie, ignoring his questioning. He reached out to pull off his belt and tied it to the door, confirming that it was firmly tied before turning back to look at Xie, speaking calmly, "You shouldn't have come here." Wu Huan was about to say a few words about the boundary when he heard the coffin make a sound. Wu Huan turned around with a frightened expression and said, "Didn't I worship you just now?" However, at this moment, the trembling coffin was suddenly lifted up, and a man wearing a black leather jacket, sunglasses, and a mischievous smile emerged from inside. It was not Black Glasses but someone else. Black Glasses with a sly smile jumped out of the coffin, seemingly happy to scare Xie. He took out a rosewood box from the coffin. Zhang Qilin spoke up and said, "I found a box, you found a person, and you have won this game." Zhang Qilin ignored his black glasses and showed no interest in them. He turned around and ran outside. Black Glasses followed behind and ran out together, and Xie quickly followed suit. The three of them quickly left the Golmud Sanatorium, and Xie realized that there was an off-road vehicle parked at the door. Zhang Qilin and Black Eyes sneaked in without looking back. The vehicle had no intention of waiting for Xie to get in, but it started. Following closely behind, Xie chased and shouted loudly, "Hey! Wait for me! I haven't gotten in the car yet," said Xie anxiously behind the big man, but whether it was Zhang Qilin or Black Glasses, it seemed like they were intentionally trying to get rid of him. Finally, when Xie got into the car out of breath, he could only gasp for breath and stare at Zhang Qilin. It looked like a small daughter.in.law, but Zhang Qilin ignored him and sat on the side, closing his eyes to rest. Xie was completely exhausted, desperately dressed in coarse clothes, and it took him half a day to recover his breath. Immediately, he looked around and was dumbfounded. The car was full of people, and they all looked at him with a smirk on their faces. And what surprised Xie the most was, he knows many people. Xie saw several particularly familiar faces at a glance. All of them are the ones who survived from the Tiangong Anning team. Seeing Xie's shocked expression, the person who was particularly familiar with him laughed the last time he robbed a tomb. The Caucasian said to Xie in broken Chinese, "Super Wu, the nickname given to him by Anning, it's fate to meet you from afar." Just before Xie could react, a scene that shocked him even more appeared. Xie saw Anning's head poking out from behind the passenger seat and gave her a very surprised look. "Anning, why are you here? Boss Wu, aren't you here too? I almost got scared by you in Hangzhou, fortunately I acted quickly enough. From this to this, it seems that you are no longer as innocent as before. What did you find in the sanatorium? Why don't you share it with me? Didn't you all take it first?" Xie rolled his eyes. He was very angry now and didn't want to talk to anyone. He silently hugged his backpack, didn't speak, and began to learn from Zhang Qilin's way of closing his eyes and recuperating. Anning didn't pay any attention to him either. The group sat in the car and wandered around for a few hours. When they arrived at the campsite, Xie stopped Zhang Qilin, "Little brother, you haven't answered me yet. When did you leave the bronze door? Why were you with them?" Zhang Qilin gave Xie a faint glance and did not speak. At this moment, Black Glasses poked his head out of the car and smiled, saying, "Yes, mute Zhang. Let's talk and see, I also want to hear." Xie turned around and glanced at the despicable guy with black glasses, then turned around and closed the car door. "Don't leave, answer my question first." Seeing that Zhang Qilin didn't answer and had to leave, Xie blocked Zhang Qilin's path. Zhang Qilin remained silent, and Xie was furious. He directly grabbed Zhang Qilin's collar with both hands and pressed him against the car door, "Say it or not." Black Glasses pulled open the car window, and he looked at Xie and Zhang Qilin with a mischievous smile on his face, looking like he was eating a melon. However, Zhang Qilin remained silent and just stared at Xie, causing her to immediately hesitate. He let go of him and pulled the rope off his hoodie. At this moment, Xie didn't know why she suddenly felt a little guilty, so she changed the topic and said, "You took my belt, I must find something to replace it." "I won't say it earlier." Zhang Qilin pressed Xie's shoulder and left with a calm expression on his face. 008, Xie is going crazy. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Looking at his belt with black glasses, he felt that Xie was probably lacking a belt. He immediately got off the car and lifted his coat, saying, "Third Master, I need a belt. I have it here." Xie glanced at what was inside her black glasses pants. "Are you sick? You smuggle sunglasses, you." "No, I'm showing you this." Black Glasses excitedly introduced himself and worked hard to pat the belt around his waist. "Made of genuine leather, it's sturdy. It's 888 yuan. I'll give you a genuine price of 444 yuan, how about it?" "I don't want it, my rope is just right and still works." Xie turned around and wanted to leave. He really didn't want to talk to this guy, but he was stopped by his black glasses. "Another half discount, 222 yuan. It can't be any less." Xie rolled his eyes and said, "Is this guy having a brain problem?" "No, who the hell are you?" "Me." As soon as Black Glasses heard this, he immediately became serious and said, "Some people call me Black Glasses, while others call me Black Blind. The people on the road call me Black Lord." At this moment, Aning, who had been standing in the distance watching the excitement, walked over from the side. Black Lord and Little Brother are collectively referred to as blind in the south and mute in the north on the road, both of whom are consultants hired by our company this time. Consultant. Why? When Xie heard this, people were all dumbfounded. Can even such a person be a consultant? So some people were dissatisfied. Anning's beautiful eyes twitched slightly, revealing a beautiful smile as she spoke. "What's going on? These two are clearly priced on the road. If Wu Sancheng can afford them, we can't afford them." Upon hearing this, Xie felt it was reasonable, but she didn't want to argue against her own face, so she ignored Anning. "Where are you going this time?" "I'm going with you too." "Tomuto, go to the desert to find the West Queen Mother's palace." Black Glasses answered seriously, then grinned and waved his hand at Xie, saying, "So, should I consider buying a pair of sunglasses? It's not expensive to use in the desert, it's only 50. "No need." Xie gave the Black Glasses a big white eye directly. "Why haven't you seen the Little Brother?" 500 yuan, I'll tell you where dumb Zhang is." Black Glasses gave a cheap smile. "No need, I'll ask myself." As Xie spoke, he grabbed a passerby and asked a foreigner who had gone to the heavenly palace with him last time. "Brother, where did that Little Brother go just now?" "Little Brother? Are you talking about Mr. Zhang?" "Over there." Picasso smiled and pointed to a small hill in the distance, where a figure in a black cloak sat. After a while, he saw the Little Brother walk over and say something to the person, rubbed his head, and then left. "Who is that person?" Upon seeing this scene, Xie seemed incredulous and exclaimed in some surprise. "Do you think they know each other very well?" However, at this moment, Black Glasses leisurely walked over and said, "That person with a black cloak. I'm not sure, he was brought over mute and still very precious." Anning said, "That tent over there is yours." "Oh. The person brought by the young man. How can he easily lead people? Is this person not average?" Xie scratched her head and walked to the tent pointed out by her Black Glasses just now. But before he could wait for a while, he noticed that Zhang Qilin had gone to another tent, so he also came up and a few people came to the tent of the Lord Numa. The elderly man spoke Tibetan, while his grandson Xiuxiu stood aside to translate. Upon hearing the old man's words, Zaxi nodded and turned to everyone, saying, "Grandma said that this plate is missing 2 pieces and the map is incomplete, so we cannot set off to Tomuto." Anning's eyes furrowed slightly as she hugged her arms and spoke under the 2 surging headlights. can the old man give me a clear path? Where are the other 2 fragments? Ding Zhuoma pondered for a moment and gave 2 words, Langguo. After obtaining the place name of Langguo, Zhang Qilin turned around and left. Wu Xie stopped him again, staring at Zhang Qilin with a pair of dark and bulging eyes, with a posture of not wanting to leave until you understand today. Upon seeing this, Black Glasses was shocked and quickly came out laughing. All right, mute Zhang, let's talk to them quickly. Places like this small gate, courtyard, and farmhouse are more suitable for me to go. Before leaving, Black Glasses patted Zhang Qilin's shoulder and said with a meaningful expression, enjoy your happiness as a whole. After that, he hummed a song and left. Zhang Qilin knew the kindness of Black Glasses in his heart, but he still spoke coldly and said, go back, it's dangerous here. Okay, if you understand what you're saying, I'll go back. Wu Xie made up her mind not to go and refused to let her go. Zhang Qilin frowned slightly, knowing that Wu Xie didn't understand and wouldn't leave. He took advantage of the gap between them when Anning came out and walked away. The rest of Wu Xie was trembling with anger in place. Almost vomiting blood. 009, Wu Xie with high emotional intelligence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhang Mu looked at Zhang Qilin walking over with concern and said, Liner, how are you? Are you okay? Have you remembered anything? Zhang Qilin looked at him with a worried expression and said to Zhang Mu with a touch of emotion in his eyes, it's okay. I just remembered that I seemed to have been there for a long time before and was very familiar with it. I can't recall the specifics. Upon hearing Zhang Qilin say this, Zhang Mu breathed a sigh of relief and said, it's good not to have those messy memories. Is that the friend you mentioned earlier? Wu Xie. He cares about you very much, won't you tell him more specifically? Zhang Mu paid attention to Zhang Qilin and the others when they returned to the campsite. With his hearing, he could naturally hear from such a distance. He shouldn't have been involved. Zhang Qilin replied with a worried eyebrow in his eyes. Well. That's good. However, maybe you can talk more to Wu Xie. Wait a moment, are you going? Zhang Qilin cherishes his words like gold. If it weren't for being from the Zhang family and getting to know each other well, others wouldn't know what Zhang Qilin was talking about. In fact, he was talking about waiting for his Black Glasses to come back and asking Zhang Mu if he wanted to go to the Dingzhuoma tent together and listen. No need anymore, Zhang Mu smiled slightly and said, familiar with the plot, of course he knew what was going to happen. On the other hand, Wu Xie and others, who had been coldly treated by Zhang Qilin, reacted and happened to see the figure wearing a red cloak sitting on the small hill pointed out to him by the Picasso before. After thinking for a moment, Wu Xie lifted her leg and walked over. Upon hearing the footsteps coming from not far away, Zhang Mu regained consciousness from his daze and lifted his head. As soon as Wu Xie came up, he was right in front of Zhang Muyang's crystal-clear eyes, with an irresistible curiosity and scrutiny in his eyes. Wu Xie suddenly realized why her eyes were familiar, it was the person she saw on the street that day. It's you. You. Hello, my name is Wu Xie. Zhang family, Zhang Mu. Zhang Mu smiled at Wu Xie, moved his position, exposed half of the big stone, and slowly spoke up, I know you. Liner told me about your situation, and we even had a face-to-face meeting last time. Liner. Wu Xie has some doubts. It's Zhang Qilin, and Liner is his nickname. Wu Xie saw that Zhang Mu was not on much guard, so she boldly walked over and said, I didn't expect you were also from the Zhang family. So, are you the elder of the younger brother? Zhang Mu knew about Wu Xie's human nature. At this time, he was still relatively innocent and not a later evil emperor. Now, his curiosity was too strong. Zhang Mu answered his question as much as possible. In terms of seniority, I am his seventh uncle, but I am not much older than him, I am only 5 years older. Well. Those Black Glasses said the young man's gaze is like a treasure. Wu Xie blushed slightly as she spoke. This one. Zhang Mu smiled slightly and said, back then, he was tricked into going to the Golmud Sanatorium, which is where you went. I went to rescue him and killed over 100 people on the way. I also suffered some injuries myself. Since then, he has been very nervous about me, which is what you call treasure. Upon hearing these words, Wu Xie was instantly stunned and saved the little brother alone. What a poignant story is this. Another 100 people will be killed. How powerful is this person? In just a few words, Wu Xie and Zhang Mu became acquainted. Although Wu Xie was still shocked by Zhang Mu's rescue, he still accepted it. At the same time, Zhang Mu explained his situation to the fullest, and Wu Xie's liking for Zhang Mu was explosive. And Zhang Mu didn't need Wu Xie to explain, Wu Xiaogo saw him as a friend he could confide in. As the sun slowly set, time passed by in a hurry. I went to Langquo's black glasses and came back with a man and a woman. Wu Xie and Zhang Mu returned to the vicinity of the tent together, and Zhang Mu said to Wu Xie, I won't go there. After saying these words, Zhang Mu turned around to find Zhang Qilin. Out of curiosity, Wu Xie went to the tent with black glasses. Seeing Wu Xie pull up the tent and enter with black glasses, she stood up with a smile and said, Oh, third young master. With a mischievous smile on his face, he pulled Wu Xie up and said proudly to the man across from him, Come on, let me introduce you. This is Wu Xie, the third young master of the Nine Gates Wu family. This is the Nine Gates solution. Later, you all belong to the Nine Gates. Then you should know each other. Wu Xie. Why are you here? Xiuxiu, who looked delicate, asked in surprise. Wu Xie looked at Xiuxiu and spoke in an uncertain tone, You. Are you a little flower? Upon hearing Xiuxiu's answer, Wu Xie murmured softly, Xiaohua. Isn't she a woman? Xiuxiu sighed silently, You remember correctly. Wu Xie was immediately surprised when she heard this and said, Ah. Have you changed gender? I just looked too delicate when I was a child. Xiuxiu looked at Wu Xie with a hint of an impulse to grit his silver teeth in his eyes. The emotional intelligence of the Wu family really doesn't know how high it is. 10. Xiuxiu's Wild View. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Oh. Wu Xie also realized that her speech was a bit inappropriate. She nodded awkwardly and then spoke to the woman next to Xiuxiu, So you should be Xiuxiu, right? It's me, brother Wu Xie. Xiuxiu is a cute and playful girl who smiled and said. As soon as Black Glasses heard that these three people had known each other before, his heart immediately felt at ease. He saw him, who was already familiar, move away from the chair and sit down with Wu Xie. Since we all know each other, it would be much easier. Young Third Master, please advise this young man that the fragments of that plate are in their hands. Wu Xie looked at Xiuxiu, pondered for a moment, and then slowly spoke up, Xiaohua, you can't do anything with this fragment alone. So, I'll take you to find Anning and talk to her. Xiuxiu and Xiuxiu exchanged a glance and nodded. What they want is this effect. After reaching an agreement with Xiuxiu, Anning finally obtained the two fragments in their hands. At this moment, Anning spoke up, Young Master, it was agreed beforehand that this operation will be led by me. You must listen to me. The price can only be half. Xiuxiu nodded and then spoke. I know, you don't have to worry about this, and we don't need your share of the money either. After Xiuxiu finished speaking, he turned around and went to find Wu Xie. Wu Xie, how did you find this place? Xiuxiu walked up to Wu Xie and asked curiously. Wu Xie took a deep breath at this moment, then nodded and said, Someone sent me a few videotapes. There is a sandwich in that videotape, and the key is the things inside the sandwich. I found them here according to the instructions of the things inside the sandwich. After listening, Xiuxiu felt lost in thought and then prepared to leave. Embroidery, are you going back now? Xiuxiu walked over and asked. Xiuxiu got into the car and said seriously, Brother Xiaohua, my grandmother received that videotape before, but she saved it very well. I want to go back and see what's inside my grandmother's videotape. Xiuxiu nodded and said, okay, pay attention to safety on the way. Xiuxiu fastened her seatbelt, as if she had thought of something, so she spoke again, Brother Xiaohua, be careful with those black glasses. I always feel like he doesn't seem like a good person. But the mysterious person around Zhang Qilin gives a very gentle feeling, perhaps a good person. Xiuxiu nodded and said, don't worry, I have a sense of propriety. Be careful on the way. As Xiuxiu left, night fell and the group gathered in the largest tent in the middle. Anning handed over the repaired porcelain plate to Xiuxiu. Can we go now? At this moment, Zaxi nodded and said, Grandma said, the porcelain plate is complete and you can go. However, please note that you only have 10 days, after which you will have to wait for another 5 years. Just as he finished speaking, a tall figure, under the gaze of his old love, opened the tent and walked in. It was Zhang Mu. He walked over to Zhang Qilin without looking at him and handed him the things in his hand. The black glasses furrowed his brows, and he could feel that the threat this person posed to him was no less than that of Zhang Qilin. He couldn't help but be more curious about who this person was. Not only with black glasses, but also Xiuxiu and Anning curiously scrutinized the person who was peacefully nestled next to Zhang Qilin, but Zhang Mu did not look up until the discussion was over. After discussing the plan repeatedly, the group finally resolved many details and agreed on the next action plan. They then left one by one. Zhang Qilin looked at Zhang Mu, who was a bit shaky beside him, and reached out to play with his face buried in his knee. Zhang Mu looked up in a daze. He, who was familiar with the plot, didn't care at all about these things. He knew how the plot would go, so he fell asleep impatiently just now. The mask on his face only revealed the soft lines of the lower half of his face, and the black glasses that fell behind carefully scrutinized him. He was really handsome. Zhang Qilin lowered his head and helped Zhang Mu brush away the scattered hair that fell near his eyes before slowly speaking up. Let's go. Zhang Mu smiled slightly, stood up, and walked out with Zhang Qilin. Black Lord, this person was strange to me the first time we met, but it made me feel even more strange. Do you know who he is? Anning frowned and looked at the person walking tall behind Zhang Qilin, then asked. Who knows? I'm so familiar with Mute Zhang, and it's also the first time I've seen him. He treats people like treasures like this. Black Glasses shrugged his shoulders as if he couldn't figure out why, so he spoke up, but I can feel that although this person looks weak, his strength is probably not below my Mute. Upon hearing Black Glasses say so much, Anning knew in her heart that he was not joking. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but show a hint of seriousness. Black Glasses smiled and said, Don't be so nervous, he won't pose any threat to you. As long as you don't provoke him, Zhang Qilin won't be difficult for you. Black Glasses finished speaking and left. Zhang Mu still sat on a large stone outside the tent in a daze, looking up at the starry sky. Zhang Qilin brought a bowl of butter tea over, and Zhang Mu smelled an indescribable milky smell. He felt a little curious and looked up at the butter tea in his hand, lost in thought. Tibetan butter tea, try it.